Have you ever stopped to wonder how a massive company, say an airline or a huge online retailer, actually keeps track of everything? I mean, we're talking millions of transactions, customer interactions, and moving parts every single second. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the powerful information systems that make it all happen, and we're going to look at it from an accountant's point of view.
I mean, really think about it. Every single time someone clicks buy, every time a customer calls with a question, every package that leaves a warehouse, how on earth does a business capture all that, make sense of it, and not just completely collapse into chaos?
Well, the secret is in these incredibly smart, complex systems. And in this explainer, we're going to break it all down for you. We'll start with the absolute basics. What's the difference between data and information? Then we'll get into the systems themselves. Compare the two big types, AIS and MIS, look at how they actually work, and finally, wrap up with the super important role that accountants play in all of this. All right, so to really get our heads around these systems, we've got to start at square one, with the most fundamental building blocks of it all. This is such a critical difference to understand. You can think of data as just a big pile of raw ingredients. You know, a list of numbers, a bunch of names. On their own, they don't mean much. Information, on the other hand, is the finished meal. It's when you take all that raw data, process it, organize it, and give it context. Suddenly, it's something you can actually use to make a smart decision. And here's a perfect example to make that real. So you've got a long list of invoice numbers. That's just data. It's a list. But the moment the system gets its hands on it and starts working, sorting it by customer, adding up who owes what, maybe even flagging the invoices that are getting really old, poof, that raw list transforms into powerful information. Now it's telling you a story about who you need to call like right now to get paid. Okay, so if data is the raw material and information is the finished product, what's the factory in the middle, doing all the work? Well, that brings us to the systems themselves and the transactions that fuel them. You know, these systems didn't just appear out of thin air. They've come a long way. We started with people and paper, the manual model. Then came the 70s and 80s with this flat file model, which was a real mess, honestly. Every department had its own separate, clunky system, and data was all over the place. The 90s brought a huge leap forward with the database model, finally putting everything in one central spot. And that leads us to today's giants, ERP systems. These are the whole shebang, integrating every single part of the business into one system. So, what fuels these systems? Are transactions, or business events. But here's the key. Not all events are created equal. You've got your financial transactions. That's when money actually changes hands, like a customer buying a plane ticket. But the system also has to track non-financial transactions, like when that same customer just makes a reservation. No money has moved yet, but the airline absolutely needs to know that seat is spoken for. The system has to track both to give a complete picture. Now that we know what these systems run on, let's zoom in a bit and look at the two main types you'll find inside pretty much any big company. Yeah, this is a big question, and it can be a little confusing, but the difference is actually pretty clear once you see how they split up the work.
And here's the breakdown. The Accounting Information System, or AIS, is all about the morning. It's the financial brain. It handles sales, purchases, and even things that directly lead to financial transactions, like setting up a new vendor you're going to have to pay later. The Management Information System, or MIS, is the operations brain. It handles all the other stuff you need to run the business, like tracking customer complaints or managing employee data. They're two separate brains, but they're constantly talking to each other.
All right, so we know what they are and what they do. Now for the fun part. Let's pop the hood and see how an accounting information system actually turns raw data into useful reports. It's a pretty logical journey when you see it laid out. Step 1, you have a data source. Let's say a customer buys something. Step 2 is data collection, where the system grabs that sale, records it, and makes sure it's valid. Then comes the heavy lifting, data processing, where it sorts, calculates, and summarizes everything. That leads to step 4, information generation, where it spits out a nice, clean report. And then, and this is the magic part, it all comes full circle with user feedback. A manager looks at the report, makes a decision based on it, and that action creates brand new data, starting the whole cycle over again. It's a continuous loop. So it's easy to think of all this as just computers and code running in the background, right? But these systems are nothing without the people who build, run, and check on them. And that brings us to our final section, the 3 absolutely crucial roles an accountant plays in the life of an information system. First up, and this is the most obvious one, accountants are the system's #1 users. They are in the trenches every single day, using the AIs to do their jobs.
But being a great user isn't just about knowing which buttons to push. It's about being able to clearly tell the designers what information you need and why, so the system can actually be useful and effective.
But their role goes way deeper than just using the system. And that brings us to their second and maybe most powerful role, the designer.
Now, let's be super clear here. Accountants are not writing code. That's the IT department's job. They build the physical system. Think of it this way. The accountant is the architect who draws up the blueprint for a house. They decide where the rooms go, what rules to follow, and how it all has to work. They design the conceptual system, the logic. Then they hand that blueprint over to the IT team, who are the construction crew that actually builds it.
Okay, so the system is designed and it's up and running. But how do we know we can actually trust it? That's where the third vital role comes into play, the auditor.
Once a system is live, you need someone to check under the hood and make sure it's doing everything correctly and reliably. That's the auditor's job. You can think of them as the quality inspectors for the information factory. They come in, they test the system, they evaluate its controls, and they provide assurance that the numbers coming out of it are accurate and can be trusted.
So there you have it. We've gone from a single, raw piece of data all the way to the complex, human roles that accountants play in designing and managing these massive systems. But this whole journey leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. With technologies like AI and big data exploding, what's next? What will the information system of tomorrow even look like? Now that is something to chew on.